let's learn some pharmacy acts. Now, in the pharmacy world we live in today, it was shaped and molded over time legislatively through a lot of these acts that we're going to learn about in this lecture. Now, one of the things I do want to say is you're mainly learning this for your exam. It is good to know the history behind your career, behind your job choice, to know just why we do some of the things the way we do. And learning these acts will not only help you to be in line with the law, but it's also help to understand how we got there. So let's go through these acts chronologically. We're going to start out with 1906 with an act known as the Federal Food Drug Act of 1906. It was sometimes known as the Pure Food and Drug Act, and the act was considered to be the beginning of the Food and Drug Administration. It prohibited the commerce of misbranded foods, the drinks, the drugs, and let's just remember what misbranded means here. It just means to label misleadingly. I can't, and you still can't do that. You can't put anything on a label that maybe leads someone to believe that they're getting something out of it that they're not. Not pointing any fingers here, but occasionally the supplement industry may do exactly that. Let's move on to the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act of 1938. This is the exact same thing that you saw in 1906 from the Food and Drug Act, but now it's updated a little bit. Now we have the FDA with the authority to require proper testing of new medications for safety. Now you can really see why we do that now, while we have this long testing process. It began with the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act of 1938. It required that all new drugs to be shown as to be safe prior to marketing. There are drugs out there that may have helped us at some point, but did so much harm to different patients that might have taken it that it was just deemed to be too risky to bring it to market. Also, this act brought around authorized factory inspections. So now the FDA can go and take a look at a factory and make sure that they're being sanitary, that they're being safe, that their chemicals are being stored in a proper way. All of that comes from the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act of 1938. The Durham-Humphrey Amendment of 1951. This was just an amendment to the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act that we just learned about. It created the two classes of drugs that you're familiar with to this day, and that is a legend drug, which whenever you hear the term RX legend, you can just hear prescription drug. A legend drug is a prescription drug. And then the other class it made was over-the-counter, OTC. So just like when you go into any pharmacy, any retail pharmacy today, you'll have all your drugs over the counter and then all the drugs behind the counter with the pharmacist and the pharmacy technician. Now, all the prescription drugs had to have this statement from this particular amendment. Caution, federal law prohibits dispensing without a prescription. Many times today, you'll look at a prescription bottle and it will say RX only. And I'm discussing the manufacturer bottle here, not the bottle that you get from the pharmacy with the nice prescription label on it. The manufacturer's bottle will say RX only. Same idea here is caution, federal law prohibits dispensing without a prescription. So previous to this amendment, the manufacturers were free to determine whatever category they are in. If they wanted it to be over the counter, over the counter. If they wanted it to be behind the counter with the pharmacist, no problem. It was their choice as well. But the Durham-Humphrey Amendment kept that from happening, and that was in 1951. The Kefauver-Harris Amendment of 1962. This was known as the Efficacy Amendment. The first update to the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act since that Durham-Humphrey Amendment that we just talked about. This required manufacturers to provide proof that their drug was effective and safe before market approval. Now you're starting to see why we had the different steps to be able to show that a drug is safe before we move it on. It's because of this Kefauver-Harris Amendment of 1962. Now the FDA had the power to oversee prescription drug advertising. The Poison Prevention Packaging Act of 1970. It's almost exactly what it says it is right from that act. This helped to reduce the chance of accidental ingestion of dangerous substances by children. Some things that you can do to deter that are the child-resistant caps, also blister packing. Iron tablets, for many of them are in blister packs. because a child isn't going to go through the time of getting open blister packs. As you and I know, sometimes it's hard to get a medication out of a blister pack anyway. So a child's not going to be able to eat, 20 tablets of iron because many of them come in those blister packs. And this required child-resistant caps on most prescriptions. So whenever you have trouble getting that prescription bottle open, it's a lot because of the Poison Prevention Packaging Act of 1970. Also in 1970 was the Drug Abuse Prevention Act. This was known as the Controlled Substances Act. It provided a legal foothold to establish the Drug Enforcement Agency. And the Drug Enforcement Agency is really the muscle, the people that are going to carry out the Controlled Substance Act. So this was a very important act in 1970 because it allowed the DEA to come. It's kind of interesting to me that the DEA is this new, that basically started around in the early 70s. And HIPAA, the Health Insurance Protection and Portability Act of 1996. I want to come here on screen just to tell you how important this is. This really is what is going to protect yours, mine's, and any patient that we deal with's personal information. I don't want that I'm taking maybe a medication that's trying to treat an STD, or maybe something that that's just embarrassing for me to let the whole world know about. So that's why pharmacists are to counsel their patients in a quiet area. That's why if you have a line of people, you may want to have the second person stay back a little bit. Every patient, their information, it's their important personal information. That's also why whenever you'll call and you'll find yourself leaving a message for a patient, you don't want to say any personal information there either. I try to not say names. I try to not say the name of the drug. It's almost like I say just nothing. I just say, this is the pharmacy. Please give us a call when you get a chance. That way, if it did go to somewhere else that it wasn't supposed to, it's not going to give away any information. So if you're asked in an exam, which of the following protect a patient's personal health information, it is the HIPAA Act of 1996. Again, it's going to protect the personal information of the patient. The Combat Methamphetamine Epidemic Act. I don't know if any of y'all have watched Breaking Bad, excellently done show, but it's about the making of methamphetamine. And in the beginning of it, they would do it by buying Sudafed, pseudoephedrine. This particular act, Combat Methamphetamine Act, regulated the sale, and you will be affected by this act. Because many times whenever someone's trying to illicitly make methamphetamine, they'll have to buy large amounts of pseudoephedrine. They will get that from a retail pharmacy. And to curb that, this act limits the amount they can buy not only per day, but also how much they can buy in a 30-day span. So let's look at how much that is. It's 3.6 grams per day they can buy. There's a little math you might have to do. You pick up a box of Sudafed and it's got 30 milligrams per tablet. You need to look how many tablets are in that, multiply that times 30 milligrams, and see if the 5 boxes that they're wanting to buy is greater than 3.6 grams. Your logbook, whether it be electronic or handwritten, needs to be able to tell me whether they've gotten some within the last 30 days, because they can only get 9 grams in 30 days. So definitely know this act, know those two numbers, the daily 3.6 gram and the 30-day 9 gram limit. Anybody that's trying to possibly make illicit drugs like methamphetamine, they're going to be exceeding this. And they'll use girlfriends and boyfriends and cousins to buy all the Sudafed that they need. Sudafed is the brand name for pseudoephedrine, and that is what we have to limit here, how much they can get of that. Whenever a patient buys this, we need to have an ID and an address, and we're going to have to keep it on file for 2 years. If you're in an institutional pharmacy like a hospital, you're not really going to have to deal with this. But in a retail pharmacy, this is going to be dealt with commonly, that you sell Sudafed and you have to get the proper documentation, an ID and an address. Most stores use an electronic logbook. Back a few years ago, a handwritten logbook was not too uncommon though. And that is it for pharmacy law. You can look at the addendum supplemental material that I have to be able to just kind of get a review over these acts. This is something that you may get a question or two on the exam, but I want you to be able to just be familiar with them because there's no reason to get them wrong. Just learn from the supplemental material, watch this video a time or two again, it's a short one, and you'll know those pharmacy laws.